America were fraught with upheaval. Civil rights activism, protests against the Vietnam War and the draft, a sense of political discontent, and a growing women's liberation movement. We, women of the 1960s generation, were there. We rode the crest of this giant wave of change. We stood up. We spoke out. Today, with the 2020 centennial anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States, we look back at the arduous path towards equality and celebrate the unparalleled advances in women's rights that our generation, unlike any before, has experienced.
I love this. This was spectacular. For those that don't know anything about women's voting rights and suffragettes and really the struggle of women in the world, this is really well done. It's very informative. I learned a lot, and I know a lot about this stuff, but I learned stuff which I was surprised by. When this first came out on my screen, I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna know what this is. No, I really learned a lot. Loved the photos. I don't know where you got all those photos, but they're spectacular. Loved the topic. I loved the shape of the dialogue. The voiceover artist did a really great job. And it was directed really well. It was very straightforward, very easy to follow. I loved everything about it. I think everyone needs to see it. I think people need to be reminded and or informed entirely of the history of this. And so I'm really happy you made it. Thank you so much.
Stand up,
And
stake
congratulations.
out. And I thought this was really an expertly constructed piece. It's a great way to sort of inform the audience, give us that good mix of visuals, both of the illustrations and the footage, and really be pretty thorough given the short duration of this little mini doc. And I thought it really stood out as just a strong one. Definitely worth checking out. The message is clear,
Stand Up,
and it's
Speak
an
Out
important
is a really amazing documentary about the rise and development of feminism over the 20th century. I really loved how this film traced the evolution from the suffragettes all the way up through modern day and gave such beautiful, a gorgeous just visual collage of all of these different eras. And I liked how also it was very inclusive too, because I think a lot of times when we hear about the suffragette movement or when we hear about earlier feminism, a lot of times it's white women who are the face of that movement, but this documentary really made sure to illustrate that no, that is not the case, and that hasn't been the case. That women of color have also been at the forefront of the women's rights movement ever since there was such a thing. So yeah, very informative for a lot of really good information in a short amount of time. And I think I would definitely recommend this film for people who are curious to see the arc from first wave feminism to second wave feminism all the way to where we are now.
That this was a really great, fast-moving pace to capture the history and that movement towards equality. Really compelling footage, found footage, images, historical documents, to create this visual accompaniment of our journey, to illustrate this movement. The music was also so lush and really captured the emotional boldness required, and mimicked the boldness of those who fought to bring us to where we are today. Historically rich as a piece, but it was also very clear in focus and digestible and inclusive also of many backgrounds, not just a certain specific breed of feminism, but showed important figures of many communities, or what other communities, especially in terms of people of color, what their journeys were in this as well.
Like Stand Up, Speak Out. I really like the message of women empowerment, power to the people, and all of that. I like the vibe. It was very hopeful. I think it was really good. It told the story of women's rights, like from the beginning, and like also told the story of how far we've come and how far we still have to go as far as women's rights in this country and the world. But I think it told it in a unique way where it also included, African American women and other not just women's rights in the like white women like framing. It was like also here's African American women because like they also were like part of the women's rights like overall story. And so I think that I like this documentary because it was not just one perspective. It was like um, we are all women of all races, all working together to topple the patriarchy, and I was rocking with it.
So
So
Stand Up, Speak Out was such a great documentary. It kind of just put so many things into 7 minutes, and it was just all the history kind of like mashed into one. And it did such a great job in doing it. It was quick with being able to kind of relay all the facts that was happening. It jumped into really important timelines, and it didn't stop at any point. It was just, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, which is great because it just makes you realize how far women's rights have come, and yet how much further we still have to go. Because it has been however many years, and yet we're still struggling to do the most basic of things. Um, so this was a really great reminder of everything that has happened, and a really great reminder of what needs to still be done. Because I feel like a lot of people just kind of sweep it under the rug and don't realize that, oh, right, that there are still so many women and people of color and of just anyone in minority groups who are still struggling. And we are, we have so much more power now than people had so many years ago. So this was honestly a great reminder. It was really great editing. It was really quick with everything that it wanted to relay, so it did its job, I think. And I feel like it is really important, and I'm eager to see what else can come from this group of creators and what other information they want to share about the world and what needs to be changed and so on and so forth. So, yep, really great job.
Is, I think, needed. I know a lot of the stories. So basically, it's a short film, a short documentary film that compiles, um, you know, uh, almost like a linear, historical, chronological, that's it, it's the word. It's a chronological look of the feminist movements in America. Um, I, a lot of the stories you've heard before, but you've heard of it in bits and pieces. And I think this is one of the first times, at least for me, where I've seen, a nice compilation of the very, yeah, I would say like the very beginning of the feminist movement in America to present day. What I also really enjoyed about this documentary is that I thought it was fair. It wasn't just glorifying the feminist movement and saying like it was perfect, but it took the time to also point out the fact that not all women were benefiting from the movement, that women of color were still suffering under the oppressive conditions that they had suffered before the movement. So I think I think it is a very important documentary film. I think it's something that is very educational, and everybody should watch it because it's not that long, and you get a lot of information. You get a pretty broad, at the same time deep overlook of the feminist movement, and I think it's a good starting point to really try to understand how women have evolved in this country.